Hey friends, it's Ian Khan at Consensus 2025. I've got with me somebody I've been waiting to meet, Alex Tapscott, best-selling author, advocate of blockchain and all that's happening within tech. Alex, welcome to the Futurist here at Consensus.
Yeah, delighted to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, you know what? I know you from a long time ago, but we finally meet. And I wanted to ask you primarily, first of all, about your new book. You're writing about Web3. I want you to debunk this entire Web3 revolution for us in the next 10 minutes, of course, easy done. But help us understand what's the book about and what are you advocating for?
Yeah, well, we're in this really interesting time in human history. Every once in a while, a new technology comes along that changes the economic order, changes culture, changes society in profound and unexpected ways. We've seen that before with the internet and before that with the PC, really all the way back to the printing press in the Middle Ages. And now we're in this moment where there's not one but several new technologies all merging at the same time. Blockchain is a technology that I've been studying for a very long time. I wrote a book called Blockchain Revolution with my dad, Tapscott. And blockchain basically represents a new internet of value. It is a medium that allows us to move and store assets peer-to-peer without intermediaries, just as the internet allowed us to move information peer-to-peer. The other technology is AI. AI is really allowing us to rethink what we thought computers could do, from devices that retrieve information to thinking machines. And I think a lot of people view these technologies as separate, but they're not, they're related. And our view at the Blockchain Research Institute, and what I share in the book, is that these technologies, along with others, are on a convergence course, and that together they're defining a new era, which we call the Web3 era. So Web3 is a word that I think a lot of people associate only with crypto. And while crypto is really important, obviously, it's one of many different use cases of blockchain, and blockchain itself is one of several technologies which together are, I think, reshaping the world in really profound ways.
So, I clearly remember about, I think it's been 12 or 14 years since, the great white paper came out and decentralization became this buzzword.
Yeah.
Crypto came in, Bitcoin came in. And it's been a while, but I think blockchain definitely has moved along and there's many use cases.
Yeah.
Where do you feel the adoption is right now, right? Are we doing great? Is it going to still take time, or help us understand where we are?
I've actually been reflecting on that question a lot in the last several months, because roughly 10 years ago, I quit my job in investment banking to take on a project with my dad to write that book, having no idea how to write a book or what was going to happen after. But I was pretty convinced at the time that this was the start of something really important. And I don't think that was obvious to everyone. In 2015, the value of Bitcoin was maybe $5 or $6 billion, and the value of all the crypto assets in circulation was less than $10 billion. So if it had been a publicly traded company, it would have been barely big enough to crack the S&P 500, the index of the biggest companies. And today we're at 3 trillion. And we're seeing this technology and this asset class become part of the conversation and become integrated into both business systems and into government and politics in ways that I think have been really exciting and in some ways unexpected. So I look at so to answer your question directly, in some respects, I think it's exceeded expectations, and in others it's fallen short. I remember speaking to Jeremy Allaire, the CEO of Circle, back in 2015, and he said his goal was to create the Google of finance, which is to say, in the same way that Google allows you to search and find information for free, he wanted a utility that would allow people to move and store value for free, and with the same level of speed and lack of friction and cost, right? And fast forward 10 years, and USDC has remained remarkably consistent to that view. It is a financial utility that is used by, according to an independent analysis, tens of millions of people. Not just as a trading pair for crypto, but as a financial utility used by people all around the world. Because ultimately, for people like you and me who live in Canada, or people who live in the US and some countries, being able to access dollars is kind of a given. But for many people in the world, it isn't. So that's the kind of thing that, to me, is really powerful. The internet democratized access to information, and that's Web 1, and Web 2 democratized access to publishing, right? Gave everyone a chance to have their voices be heard. There were some downsides to that. But Web 3 really democratizes ownership, the ability to hold and control assets and build wealth. So in that respect, I think it was really quite amazing to see how things have progressed. But in others, I think it's fallen short. In the book, we had several chapters looking at other kinds of business models, like cultural industries, for example, and another one looking at physical infrastructure. So there's lots of stuff going on, in culture. NFTs are used as a way to do marketing activations for brands. They were used by artists and creators during the last cycle to try and connect with their fans. And on the physical infrastructure side, DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure, is this big sexy topic. But if you go beneath the surface, there's not as much happening there as I think we would have hoped. And I think on the culture side, it's been a bit of a double-edged sword, because a lot of creators thought, you know what, NFTs and other digital goods could be a way to connect with fans at a more profound level. But what it did is it kind of turned the relationship from one of fandom to one that was more transactional, where basically fans became speculators. And I think that was something that actually did probably on balance more harm than good. So I think we have another kick at the can to get that right. But I think, there's some respects, it hasn't quite lived up to its potential. But, if you were to ask me a decade ago, would this market cap, if crypto was a public company, it'd be the biggest company in the world, right? Over $3 trillion in size. And would this be part of the conversation? Would there be a Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US? Would we be talking about stablecoin laws in North America and around the world? I would have said that was what we expected, and I'm happy to see it get there.
Of course. I want to ask you about, so great, $3 trillion market cap. We've had NFTs, tokenization, and there's many experiments and use cases that have happened over the last, many years. One of the things that we have apparent in the world are the large companies. You have Apple, Google, you've got these megaliths who are doing multiple trillions of dollars of business in general. I don't think any of them has talked about or experimented or done anything with the entire Web3 ecosystem. They're doing great with their own products and technologies. Why do you think? Is crypto and tokenization too small for them to look at, or do you think they should be looking at it? And I know this is like blue skying thing, but I'm trying to understand what are these large companies thinking?
Well, I'm kind of chuckling because as we're recording this, I'm looking over into the exhibition area and I see an AWS booth and a Google booth. So there's definitely an opportunity. Like Web3 startups are startups, and though there's decentralized infrastructure for cloud, for storage and compute, cloud computing companies still play a massive role in the Web3 ecosystem. So there's business for them to do. In terms of like the tokenization, I think it is probably too small at this stage for them to care. But that doesn't mean that there aren't businesses, big companies, some of them almost as large as the big tech companies, that are thinking about this really hard. Like MasterCard, Visa has a $500 billion market cap. These are businesses that understand that their core function as payments technology companies is potentially going to be disrupted by things like stablecoins. And I think many of them, much to their credit, are being proactive in embracing that. So MasterCard just integrated stablecoins across all these public networks. And I think that's another thing that's worth just touching on. When we first got into this space, there actually was a lot of excitement from enterprises, and that remains, but it's evolved with time. In the early days, it was all about, okay, we like the idea of these, a network that allows you to move and store value, that a common record that everyone can trust, that will improve the metabolism of commerce. That was the thinking around blockchains, and I think still is very relevant. But we want to do it ourselves. We're going to build our own proprietary networks. We don't want to be building on Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever the heck that is. That was the new thing. Because, who's to say that this network is ready for prime time? And things have changed a lot. Right? Like these companies today, when they build on Ethereum, they build on Solana, they build on layer 2s, they own Bitcoin on their treasury, on their balance sheets. They're not looking to like reinvent the wheel. And that's something that we've seen play out before, like with the rise of the web. During the internet era, people at big companies, CIOs, wanted to build closed intranets that they could control and that only their customers and partners could access. And what happened is eventually they all built on the open web. And the same thing is happening here with blockchain.
Last question.
Sure.
What do you anticipate to happen over the next, say, 5 years? I think the speed of things has increased with US regulations, US administration talking differently now about crypto and all of these digital assets. What do you see over the next 5 years?
Well, we like to say that the future's not something to be predicted, it's something to be achieved. And there are lots of people at this event and in this industry that are building really interesting stuff. But it's fun to speculate, and I do have a couple ideas where things are going.
Yeah.
I actually recently wrote an essay about how stablecoins have become an important buyer of US government debt, because unlike banks, which use fractional reserve, they are backed one-to-one. And at a time when the U.S. is taking a more isolationist approach, it needs more homegrown buyers of its treasuries. So I think that probably within 5 years, stablecoins will own more, will be backed by more treasuries than the top 3 or 4 countries in the world combined.
Okay.
And that would mean basically getting to about $3 trillion in size from about 250 billion today. Another thing that I'm hoping for is to see a deeper and deeper integration between blockchain and AI. Going back to the whole Web3 thesis. And there was a lot of excitement at the beginning of the year about this, the idea that AI agents are going to be doing all sorts of knowledge work in the economy, but they can't open a bank account, they can't start a business, they can't sign a contract because they're not legal persons.
Exactly.
So what they need is a digitally native way to transact and do business. And good news is we already have that, right? So crypto assets, stable coins, wallets, smart contracts, DAOs, like all of the infrastructure exists. It's already been, ironically, battle tested by people. And I think it's ready to be embraced by, autonomous AI agents. We just haven't gotten there yet on the AI side, right? So I think like once the AI side becomes more sophisticated, I think it will be very natural that agents that are out there conducting business, and you got to imagine like financial advisors, architects, graphic designers, social media managers, like all sorts of knowledge work, a wide variety of knowledge work. This is how they're going to want to get paid, because it's going to be the only way.
Of course.
So that's going to be pretty exciting too.
Absolutely. Hey, Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
That was great.
Really appreciate it. Have a great session.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll catch up with you in the future.
All right.
Take care.
Cool.
Thank you.